Welcome back one and all, it's your boy Maximus, and I really can't thank you enough for being on today's video. We are discussing wheeled armoured fighting vehicles once again, and of course many of you know if you've watched my channel in the past and some of my other videos on military equipment, that wheeled vehicles being in an armoured configuration aren't always my favourite. However, there are many different models and variants out there that really stand out as to being absolutely amazing bits of kit. And this is clearly one of them because it's combined two very important pieces of firepower and mobility to create an absolutely amazing weapons platform. Today we are talking about the M1128 MGS Stryker. It is a vehicle that doesn't get much showcase in the military world because most Strykers that you see are the ones that have basically the 50 cal on top, that are the true transports. They're not this beautiful piece of armoured firepower that you see in front of us today. So let's discuss a little bit about the M1128 MGS Stryker. In the early 70s, the Swiss company MOAG developed a new armoured personnel carrier and multi-purpose wheeled chassis. The designers carefully considered every single detail when deciding where to place the armour, what shape the body should be, as well as the ergonomics and even the chassis composition. This new armoured vehicle was called the Piranha, and I can safely say that the Piranha chassis and vehicle platform is one of the greatest wheeled armoured vehicles ever produced. It became the benchmark for pretty much all future wheeled vehicles in North America. It inspired the Canadian LAV-3, which of course is an incredible piece of military hardware, and also served as the basis for most American vehicle research when it came to upgrading different modular packages for the US Army and potentially other forces such as the US Marines. The Stryker is a modified and improved Piranha. It underwent serious competition to get into the US Army though, however. The Stryker was adopted as a universal platform for a whole range of vehicles, including the beautiful M1128 MGS armoured fighting vehicle with a heavy armament mounted on a remote control turret with an auto-loading system. The Stryker is often criticised because of its high cost and excessive weight, but its speed, which is excellent for a wheeled armoured vehicle, and its large load capacity, along with its ability to mount many different weapons and systems on there, is giving it huge justification. And overall, in terms of firepower, this thing really does pack a punch. The M1128 MGS is fitted with a 105mm M68 gun, which has similar firepower to the M60 main battle tank, which of course we know is an amazing tank for its time. The armoured plating also provides massive amounts of protection from autocannon fire and small arms fire. Being that this system is pretty modular, of course, adding extra armor protection is really not very difficult for this particular platform. It is very easy to load upon aircraft and has a fairly low profile considering the fact that it's trying to mount a gun on top of an entire troop transport. Of course, where this vehicle really shines is its maneuverability across the battlefield. It is absolutely outstanding at off-road and can still operate with a minimum of 4 wheels on either one of the sides to drive this vehicle where it needs to be, which basically means it can lose almost half of its wheels, cross between one side or the other, and continue driving along its merry way. The gun is self-stabilized, although for the most part this vehicle fires on a stable platform. The main problem with the gun is its recoil. When this thing fires inside the turret, you're having a really bad day. The gun platform itself, of course, does auto-load, which means no one actually has to be inside the turret, but when you're actually operating the sighting system, it can give you quite a nasty nosebleed from what I've heard from previous gunners on these platforms. The gun also has the ability to fire a similar kind of grape shot round, which is basically a huge amount of ball bearings or flechettes packed into a round and firing towards the enemy. The 50 caliber machine gun also gives a huge amount of suppression and firepower to light-skinned or fairly softly armoured vehicles, and this is a bit of a game changer when supporting infantry units, which for the most part this vehicle is designed for because it has quite the range of the 2,000 meters which those rounds effectively can go out to. The vehicle has quite a range of different sighting systems and optical units, including a battle management system on which the vehicle can not only communicate with other vehicles on the battlefield, but actually send its own data and visions through to the system so that other vehicles can see what they're looking at. The auto-loading system is very impressive. The rounds are ejected once fired out the back of the vehicle, which looks absolutely amazing, by the way. And just the sound of that brass hitting on the floor is just like, oh my god. It's just incredible. And we're going to have a quick look here at what it looks like when this thing does rapid fire. So as you can see, pretty impressive, and of course this thing can fire on the move with its stabilised gun. Now the Stryker does have multiple different platforms out there, some of which have just as much of an impressive weapon system as this one does. Considering this gun was originally used on the M1 Abrams and the M60, it was somewhat supposed to be some sort of tank support for the infantry, which at the end of the day isn't going to be very applicable nowadays. The 105mm really isn't able to do much in terms of supporting against tanks, but it is very capable of being able to support the infantry, whether it be fixed positions or engaging, long-range targets, or even potentially IEDs. I must admit, I've seen these vehicles before taking out IEDs that have been seen in the distance or have been tracked on the map that can be engaged from long distance with one of these 105mm rounds, preventing, explosive ordnance teams having to go out there and blow it up. Despite its anti-tank capability though, the Stryker MGS is really only intended to support infantry rather than fight tanks directly. Only 18 rounds for the main gun are carried by the vehicle. Overall, there are a number of problems with this vehicle originally that have been mainly related to its turret and the autoloading system. A lot of those bugs have now been fixed, however it still does have some serious problems, as I mentioned, with the recoil when the gun fires. Just the fact that it is on a wheeled platform and putting heavy firepower on a heavy suspension based vehicle doesn't work out so well. Of course, the other secondary armament is a 12.7 and a 7.62mm machine gun mounted to the side of the barrel. The vehicle is powered by Caterpillar 3126 diesel engine developing around 350 horsepower, which you wouldn't think is very much, and I admit it's really not, but in a wheel configuration, folks, it's quite a bit of power. The engine and transmission of the MGS can be removed and reinstalled in less than 1 hour, which is very capable for most repair crews to do. And unfortunately, the vehicle is not amphibious. It can be made amphibious with quite a lot of modifications, but really, in terms of its practicality, not so much. The vehicle can be airlifted by a C-130 Hercules, by a larger transport aircraft as well, such as the C-17, and it disembarks the C-130 in a combat-ready status, which means it doesn't need any upgrades, it doesn't need any, things taken on or off of it, the chains are dropped off, the shackles, all that good stuff. It rolls off the back and it is literally combat-ready to go, which is very important, because when you create these vehicles to be air mobile, you expect them to be off the plane ready to go, not, oh, I've got to go to the hangar for the next 2 hours to be retrofitted to go onto the battlefield. She carries a crew of 3, including the commander, gunner, and obviously the driver. With the more upgraded versions of these vehicles, they actually don't have to look through the periscope or outside the hatch systems. That's as much as I call it. Basically looking through TV screens, and I've had a lot of different arguments with people about why I don't agree with television screens and on the pros and the cons of them. Of course, they really do have quite a lot of pros over the cons, mainly for the fact that they protect the crew and they give quite a bit of high definition visibility to having to drive across terrain without having to be shot at the same time. But the MGS design crams a lot of equipment into a small space, and as a result, it's very crowded for that 3-person crew. The hatches are too small for crew members to quickly escape in the event of a fire, and the overstuffed MGS lacks the air conditioning system. In Iraq, 150-degree heat forced the army to quickly outfit the Stryker operators with special cooling vests. Moreover, the main gun fits inside a pod that rests on top of the Stryker's hull. To save the weight, the pod is unarmoured, and the pod can pretty much be easily disabled if it had to be. The military's testing agency said it had serious problems if it did get engaged by certain amounts of small arms fire, because it would disable the autoloading system, being to its no armament on top of it. But the MGS was never really expected to last long in sustained firefights, and it wasn't designed to. It's there for a quick support role. The 105mm cannon can fire 4 types of ammunition: the M900 kinetic energy penetrator to destroy some armoured vehicles, the M456A2 high explosive anti-tank round to destroy thin-skid vehicles and provide anti-personnel fragmentation, the M39A3 high explosive plastic round to destroy bunkers, machine guns, sniper positions and such, and create openings in walls, and the M1040 canister shot for use against dismounted infantry and to basically turn them into, well, shreds. The US Army allocated 9 mobile gun systems to a battalion. There were 27 mobile gun systems per Stryker brigade in 2013, but the Army is cutting the number per brigade to 10. The Army bought 142 of these systems in total, 3 of which were lost in combat. A 3-vehicle MGS platoon operates in a Stryker infantry company, one with MGS in support of a Stryker infantry platoon. As of May 2017, a Stryker Brigade combat team is equipped with 3 platoons of MGS Strykers and 3 platoons of ATGM Strykers in its weapons troop, which basically allows the vehicles to provide a lot more firepower to those heavier offset tanks with the ATGM fire support. One of the biggest problems with this vehicle right now is it's having a little bit of an identity crisis. No one really knows where to place this thing. Yes, of course, it is supporting infantry brigades, but why? Why is it there when you have tanks and Bradleys firing anti-tank weapon systems and main guns that are really outshining this 105mm gun? If they wish to clear bunkers and such, why aren't they just using, you know, the 30mm cannons or the 40mm cannons on some of the other vehicles, or even the 25mm that can really do the same job without having to have this overly complex auto-loading system inside there? A really impressive vehicle nonetheless. It really does embrace, you know, the light-skinned, wheeled, fast, get across the battlefield as quickly as you can, agility kind of thing. But, you know, the Bradley and the Stryker are kind of headbutting one another for that top infantry support vehicle. You know, the Bradley really does have the anti-tank killing role taken care of when it comes to supporting infantry. And, of course, the Strykers with the ATGMs now placed upon them also really have that support pretty much ticked in the box. There has been some serious clashes with these things in Afghanistan, and of course they have been able to knock through, you know, compound walls and provide some serious firepower to troops on the ground, and that's kind of where they've shone through a little bit more, where they see that the Bradleys, which are a little bit heavier, a little bit more difficult to repair and maintain on the battlefield such as Afghanistan, the Stryker's able to take up that, you know, forefront and say, actually, I just need a couple of wheels replaced and off I go. But the 105mm gun is very difficult to resupply, and with only that 18 rounds inside of there, is it really a game changer? It's hard to say. You know, I've seen some of those compound walls take 2 or 3 rounds of 30 to 40mm rounds of high explosives and nothing touched them. Let's hope that 105mm is actually able to do that. And I'm sure in the future we're going to see a lot more of these systems coming into play when it goes into sort of more modern day exercises and scenarios. But for me, I think this vehicle may eventually start to be replaced by more modern day systems. You know, the 105 may just be taken off and we replace everything with ATGM. And it's a video which I have talked about in the past is, do we really need main battle tank guns anymore? Are we just going to switch everything to ATGMs? It's tough to say, but I think this vehicle has served itself very, very well during its ages, and I hope you learned a little bit about it today. Folks, if you did enjoy today's video, please leave me a like and a comment in the comment section. If you've operated or served on these vehicles before, I'd love to hear your opinions on it. If I got anything wrong, I apologize. Please feel free to correct me. If you want to support my page, please check out my Patreon page. I would really appreciate that. It's in the description box below, along with my merch. If you want to buy any of my merch on there, you're more than welcome to. And if you just want to come have a chat, go check out the Discord link. It's a chat room-based server, I guess, where you can come hang out, play video games, etc., etc. And that's it for today, folks. If you want to be notified of any upcoming videos, hit the little bell button. You'll be told of when they're coming out. All the best. Bye-bye.